welcome back to this module on email writing. Before this, we had already learned that what is the importance of the subject line and the main body. What are the things that have to be included there? Here, today, we're going to talk about the closing or the signing off. As rightly said by someone, the first impression is always the last impression. Same goes for your closure as well. The impact with which you begin writing your email, the same impact has to be reflected throughout. Your tone, your language, your style should remain constant. Here are a few components that we'll be talking about that we have to include while signing off the email. First, please make sure that you're using your full name. This is a part of your ethics. Make sure that your identity is clear to the recipient of the email. You can add your full official details, your designation, etc. Be professional in the closing. When you're specifically talking about a semi-formal or a formal email, this is all the more important. Keep a professional tone by avoiding casual sign-offs like chat soon, be right back, etc. If you have exchanged several emails and feel that a more laid-back closing would be appreciated, you can go ahead for the same. But it all depends on the kind of attitude and the kind of relationship you share with the other person. Decide whether a closing is appropriate or not, depending on who the recipient of your email is. What all needs to be included in the signing off? So we have spoken about a few components that can be chosen, but a closing line might look something like this. Thank you for taking the time to review my resume and professional references. I look forward to hearing from you soon. If you want a revert, the last line, I look forward to hearing from you soon, is mandatory. But it's not necessary that the other person reverts. Use first and last name in your email to sign off to avoid confusion and help ensure that the person who's receiving it remembers you. It can be helpful to include a title that illustrates what you do, like Joe Jefferson, Sales Manager. Below this, you can even mention the credentials of your organization, like Henry Harvin Education, etc. Below the credentials of your organizations, you can even mention your seat number, desk number, your mobile number, or your extension number where you can be easily reached out. Your fax details, etc. can also be mentioned here. There are a few words or phrases that are not supposed to be used. Like when we are talking about the professional scenario, people feel and believe that here things have to be streamlined. Quotes or phrases like your friend, cheers, peace, thanks a bunch, chat soon, yours truly, etc. are not supposed to be used. And the sole reason for the same is that it is more used in the in-professional environment. When we are talking about the few common ways to end such emails, we have words like best, sincerely, regards, kind regards, thank you, warm wishes, with gratitude, many thanks, respectfully, etc. Here, if you see, the common difference is that when we are talking about the two changes, one seems to be quite informal, while this one turns out to be quite formal. So when I'm talking about email writing, I first have to decide which scenario, which aspect am I writing for? Is it formal, semi-formal, or informal? Thereafter, I have to decide on my opening as well as my closing. So here when I'm talking about my opening as well as my closing, they're directly dependent on the type of writing style that I'm choosing. Let's come and recapitulate the complete email structure. The basic structure of an email consists of two components, that's the header and the body. The header basically talks about my subject line, the sender details, the date and time, and reply to and recipient thing. When I'm talking about all these things, my header is the most important because that is what is reflected to the receiver. The subject line tells what's the email all about. Who's the sender of this email? What date and what time was this received on? The reply to message is shared in terms of I need to reply to the same message. The recipient is the person whom I have to share this email with, so his or her email address has to be mentioned. The recipient email address along with the attachments is something that is important. Many a times it's seen that people say that they have attached the document here with, but forget to attach a document. That is a big, big, big no-no in email writing. You have to make sure that proofreading is a must when it comes to email. Why? Because after proofreading, you'd get to know what are the things you have missed. There shouldn't be any scenario under which this email attachment goes missing. It is a big failure from the sender's behalf. Let's talk about the basic punctuations for email. When we are talking about language as a whole, the entire language structure includes punctuations to play a very important role. When I'm talking about the role of punctuations here, I have to talk about several things. One, we have seen that lately over the internet, people have started using multiple question tags, multiple exclamatory marks for a particular scenario. But this is a big no-no when it comes to the professional forefront. An email which is full of errors would make the recipient think that the sender doesn't know basic punctuations. Usually people put a full stop, but the sentence following begins with a small letter, which makes it a big blunder. There are multiple sentences going on without a single punctuation mark, another punctuation error. The recipient may also think that the sender doesn't care of anything, and especially when it comes about language. The sender will come across as a very casual person who's not proofread the entire document. It reduces the chances of the recipient reading the complete mail, because the thing is that when you show a casual attitude, the other person perceives it to be equally casual. You might become the subject of ridicule. That means people might make fun of the person here. So you have to be very sure when it comes to basic punctuations that you are making them right. Next comes the terminology of terminal punctuations. What is terminal punctuation and how do we use them? Let's study them further. It says that every line should end with a terminal punctuation mark. That is either a period, which is a full stop, a question mark, or an exclamatory mark. Otherwise, the sentence is not supposed to be complete. If you skip a terminal punctuation, it'll look like you never completed your thought. For example, the incorrect usage here is, I talked to finance and they have approved the agreement. But there is no terminal punctuation here, no full stop, no exclamatory mark, no question mark. Definitely here, exclamatory mark and punctuation mark won't make sense. So a full stop or a period is what is required. If you miss such things, that does mean you're too casual in approach when it comes to writing an email. Next comes the use of question mark. We've all studied about this ever since the beginning, that a question tag is basically used when we are asking a question. Use a question mark when you are using or asking a question. And this is specifically when we are talking about a situation wherein either of my WH are supposed to be used. What, why, when, where, and how. What's your status? Have you talked to your team yet? And are you free for a call tomorrow at noon so that we can discuss any potential changes? So here, if you see and read these lines, all these are questions. Usually it's seen in a casual approach that all questions are always supposed to end with a question tag, but people often forget in haste placing them. Do not bombard the recipient with a lot of questions in one go. Go one by one. And here, make sure you're using only a single question mark, not multiple question tags. Next comes the semicolons. The semicolons can also be used to connect two unique, means that they're unique in their own style, in their own tone, etc., but related sentences. It cannot act as a comma. It cannot be replacing a comma, in fact. She can call me tomorrow. She can give me an answer then. I am using this sentence as two different sentences, but both my sentences are related or interconnected to each other. That's the reason the use of my comma in the middle is incorrect. Here, I would have to use a semicolon. Next comes out to be my comma, wherein I'm talking about the most important rules of using it. Before we use a coordinating conjunction, that is and, but, for, or, nor, so, yet, etc., that's connecting two independent clauses. That is where this comma is supposed to be. I worked with a similar client last year, comma, and their open rates went up to 20% in 1 month. Now, if you see here, there's a full stop, there's a comma. The comma appears here before an and because it's a coordinating conjunction. Use after a dependent clause at the beginning of a sentence. For example, after improving their subject lines, comma, open rates improved dramatically. So when I'm talking about the improvement in the open rates, they improved only after they had improved their subject lines. It's also used as to separate items in a list. I focused on email length, readability, and content. I have three things to talk about here, so my comma is what separates them. Also, this comma before the and in the last sentence is also known as the Oxford comma. The Oxford comma because this is commonly used at the Oxford University, and we are using it basically to define three or more things. Next comes my salutation punctuation. There are a few different ways to punctuate your salutations, like when we're talking about your formal situation or use of a formal email, colons are used. Dear Miss Frost. It's a relatively casual email, use a comma, like Dear Raja. And if you're on a close term, you can even use a dash there. Hi, Aja. So here you have to make sure that what kind of situation are you writing for and how is it going to be helpful. Next comes out to be the exclamatory mark. Again, we've seen that many people do not understand that the use of exclamatory mark is only when you are exclaiming something. Either extreme happiness, surprise, excitement, or even sadness. So when we are using exclamation marks as frankly as you use question marks, that is, do not add multiple one after the other. Go individual. One single exclamatory mark does the task of all those four. If you go overboard with exclamatory mark, you'll come across as hyper and overexcited. And there's an example here. Thanks again for a productive conversation yesterday. Good news. I talked to finance and we are good to go. Can't wait to work together. So all these, if you see, are sentences occurring one after the other, but the person seems too excited if they are used together. If they're used as individual statements in different emails, they're good to go. Now, when we are talking about the entire piece together, let's recapitulate what we learned so far. First, the effectiveness of the subject lines. So beginning from the top, here are a few recapitulation things which you need to keep in mind. The first one is, which components make the subject line effective? When we are talking about the effectiveness of the subject line, that is where we have to think about a few things. One, the subject line has to be short and crisp. Number two, it should not look overboard. It should be related to the theme or the style or the topic that I'm going to write on in the main body. It should not be overexciting or overjoyed or somehow unrelated to the email. Why should you keep the subject line to be short? The question here is that if I keep my subject line lengthy, that is where my reader loses interest. And if it's not related to the main body, that is where my major problem starts occurring. Third question is, How is it that an emoji is helpful in creating a good subject line, and where do we place emojis? Emojis are usually placed in the informal or semi-formal settings because that is where people tend to look at it more. Even today in the formal settings, emoticons and emojis are used because we say that a picture conveys 1,000 words. Which factors to avoid while posing a question in the subject line? While we are posing a question in the subject line, we have to make sure that the question is not irrelevant. The question has to make sense, and the reader also has to be related to that question. It shouldn't be that the reader feels unrelated to the subject line. There are multiple types of subject lines, and they are divided into the following categories, like promotional subject lines, which are usually used by the sales department. Last chance subject lines, wherein again frequently used by the sales department. Last chance to grab 50% off, etc. Intriguing subject lines, wherein we are trying to question something out and we are going to find out what the customer has to open the email to find out what it is. Excited about the 50% off at Amazon? Again, what is this 50% off on? Whether it's on grocery, it's on apparels, electronics, whatsoever. Follow-up subject lines. You have to make sure that a follow-up subject line gives some relevance to the previous conversation as well. Do not make it unnecessarily lengthy. Do not keep it too short. You have to make sure that the follow-up subject line talks about both the things what have been spoken in the past plus what is this particular email about. Humorous subject lines which make you laugh, and you have to make sure that again we are here talking about use of humor only when you are in a cordial relationship with the other person. It should not be that the humor that you have used acts as a hindrance to the email. Subject line for events. We are typically talking about subject lines here, which we use for typical events like annual general meeting or maybe board meeting, general conference, etc. Festive subject lines, wherein the authorities want to greet everybody in one go or want to cater to multiple people on the go. So let's talk about these in detail. The first one turns out to be the promotional subject email line. Now, if you see here, when we're talking about the promotional email subject line, that is where special offer, 20% off on your first order. Let us fill your pantry with you saving up to 30%. So when we are talking about all these things, we have to make sure that we are noting the following points. 1, it contains a promise of saving on hot deals. Hot deals means something that is on the go, something that is very much relevant. These promotional subject lines also work perfect when they are sent at the right time and are personalized. If I'm talking about the first order for someone, it has to be the first order for that website. It should not be that the person is a frequent buyer and then we are sending this across. The last chance subject lines. When we're talking about the last chance subject lines, that is where we have to make sure of the following components. 1, there are texts such as urgent, important, and alert. This may motivate people to open the email that you have sent, but this does not always work. You have to make sure that the last chance claims is actually genuine. It turns out to be genuine to the readers. It's crafted in such a way that the subscriber tends to open it immediately. Like, hurry up, this offer expires in, either you mention the time or you simply mention expires today. Enjoy 40% off on all Miniso products only for today. So here again, you're mentioning a timeline or you're giving the particular time in which the entire scene would expire. The intriguing subject lines wherein one person is actually yearning to receive an answer to the question that you have asked. Do you want to test your luck? Yes, definitely. Everybody wants to. You're invited. Or imagine a suit this color. What color is it? Or do you want to dazzle yourself just like Bollywood celebrities or Hollywood celebrities? And so on and so forth. So, when you're asking such important questions, the best way of keeping your customers curious is that you relate it to their general life. They usually depend on Bollywood, Hollywood celebrities, and even these Instagram and other influencers. That is where you make it all the more interesting for them to know, and it is intriguing. Next comes up to be my follow-up subject lines. These follow-up subject lines are great when it comes to the idea of work. They display an ideal sense of urgency there. It invites potential customers to return to a service they might have earlier abandoned. They might have looked over it, but now it is a follow up. So it's all the more important that these people open that email to check. You've left something in your shopping cart. Which shopping cart are you talking about? Which product have I left in there? People tend to open it up. We are still giving instant discounts, and discount is something which attracts and lures most of the customers. Are our Tuesday plans still on? So here, when we are talking about such things, if you see, there's a slight difference in terms of one, which is talking about more related to your shopping cart, more formal. Instant discounts, again, related to my sales and marketing. And the third one turns out to be more informal. Next comes out to be my humorous subject lines. Now, they contain a funny subject wherein which is most likely to get people tickling. And they are very common. You have to be unique, and you have to make sure that you start selling what others aren't in a position to offer. Like, no, still not leaving the competition, get 2 shoes for the price of 1. Perfect. Here's another email. Defense against the dark arts, ESAT. So here, when we are talking about these things, all these turn out to be a little laughter bag. So here, make sure that the kind of relationship you've developed with your customers is such that they get to know about this humor. Now, when we're talking about subject lines for events, we have to make sure that they're eye-catching. They grab the hook, and the information is being shared at the same time. It shouldn't be that they're talking about only the event. Definitely that's important, but other details are also shared there. Your task is to make them curious about the email so that they hit the open button. You have to make sure that there are multiple subscribers who are opening it and they're able to understand that why are they receiving this email. Otherwise, it's all in vain. Do not forget that when we are sending an invite or event invite typically, a reminder email also has to be shared for the same. You have to remind your customers about how much you value them and what value would they be receiving after attending this event. A few examples here are, and we'd love to see you at High Tech Conf. Exclusive ticket price just for you, and so on and so forth. When we are making the customer feel valued, that is where the customer tends to open the email. A few reminders, wherein last chance to meet the top SEO specialists of the month. The tickets are almost sold out. Grab yours now. And see you tomorrow at the High Tech Conference. So here, when we're talking about all these things, they tend to be more as reminders. The festive subject lines, again, when we are talking about festivals, we consider them to be a great chance for the sales and marketing team to take over. So here, when we're talking about the festive season, people are happy spending money. The emailers and the marketers have to grab this opportunity. They have to win this cruel competition for their attention in their inbox. And they have to create this specialized content for the same. They have to analyze the methodologies that work best for them and use personalized and creative campaigns and messages. Take into account what your client is going to behave like. What is his purchasing decision? What is his purchasing behavior? What is it that they often do? And you are on the go there. So here you have to make sure that this is the right time to grab their eyeballs towards your brand. A few examples here are: the best deal you'll find at the end of the year, grab your favorite sweater with 75% off. Are you ready to party? Shop essentials for New Year, and enjoy free shipping today only. 2 hours left until the new year, up to 50% off. Are you ready for the party? Everything at $9.99. So here, when we are talking about these things, this is more related to our marketing domains. Let's recapitulate quickly what we learned so far. You have to make sure that you're able to answer these questions so that you're good to go when you are doing an email. Under which circumstances should we avoid sending an email? When we are aware that this is more professional and cannot be held over black and white, a verbal or a face-to-face conversation is needed. I have to identify that scenario. Either I'm not good at communication, or I have to make sure that my message is delivered clearly to the other end. When we're talking about the words which should not be used while signing off in a professional email are like cheers, meet you soon, be right back, waiting for your response. They are more informal. Here, in the professional front, they cannot be used. List the features of an email. So when we are talking about an email as a whole, we begin right from the top. We begin from the to, that is my sender's email address, followed by my subject line. Then comes my greetings. Again, I have to bifurcate it as per what kind of an email am I writing, formal, semi-formal, or informal. My main body, which answers all my WH questions, what, why, when, where, how. I have to make sure I'm using the right language, the right tone, punctuations. I am proofreading the same. And finally, the closure, wherein I have to make sure that I'm writing my complete name, followed by my official details. Next question is, what are the benefits of using emojis in email? So when I'm talking about emojis, they convey 1,000 words. So here, in order to make my subject line shorter, crisper, these emojis act as a kind of different effect that it gives to my mail body. Which words are manipulative words in the subject line of an email? We have to make sure that even if I'm writing an email for my marketing as from the marketing department, the words that I'm using are not manipulative. They do not make double sense. We have to make sure that they're simple and crystal clear. What are the various components of headers? Under greetings, I can have dear, I can have hi, and the way I wish to greet depending on my relationship with the other person. What is the terminal punctuation in an email and how do we use it? Give examples. So when we're talking about terminal punctuations, we're talking about full stops, that's periods. We're talking about exclamatory mark, we're talking about question tags. Wherever we have a question tags are supposed to be used. Wherever we have a full stop, that is a complete sentence, full stops to be used. Wherever we're talking about extreme happiness, sadness, excitement, etc., exclamatory marks to be used. Hooray! It's 70% off. Hooray! Exclamatory mark. 70% off, full stop. With this, we've come to the end of this module. Stay tuned and we'll be back with some more informative videos right back. Thank you so much.